What if I told you that after 1808, when America supposedly banned the slave trade, slavery didn't end? It got worse, much worse. They turned human beings into livestock. They turned black women's bodies into factories. They called it natural increase. We call it what it was, slave breeding farms. In 1808, Congress passed a law banning the importation of enslaved Africans into the United States. Your history teacher probably mentioned this. They probably told you it was progress. They probably made it sound like America was moving away from slavery. They lied. Because what happened next was one of the most organized, systematic, profit-driven crimes against humanity in world history. And they erased every trace of it from your textbooks. Between 1790 and 1860, over 1 million enslaved people were sold from Virginia, Maryland, and Kentucky to the Deep South. 1 million human beings, mothers, fathers, children. 1 in every 4 of those people were children ripped from their mother's arms before they could even remember their faces. Babies sold like cattle, families destroyed by design. And for 75 years after slavery ended, not a single textbook mentioned it. Your history teacher never told you this. Your textbook skipped this chapter entirely. And they did it on purpose, because if you knew how organized this system was, if you understood the industrial scale of this crime, you would understand that your poverty today isn't your fault. The wealth gap isn't because black people don't work hard enough. It was designed. It was stolen. And the theft never stopped. This is the story they buried. This is your stolen inheritance. This is the crime against humanity that shaped every struggle you face today. And by the time you finish this video, you'll never see America the same way again. By the end of this video, the wealth gap will make perfect sense. Police brutality will make perfect sense. Mass incarceration will make perfect sense, because it's all connected to this. Everything you're experiencing right now, every struggle your parents faced, every barrier your grandparents hit, it all traces back to what I'm about to show you. You'll know the exact names of the states that ran breeding operations: Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri. Not the Deep South where you think of slavery. The upper states, the ones that get to pretend they were better. They weren't. They were worse. They were the factories. You'll understand how doctors, lawyers, businessmen, and churches participated in turning black women's wombs into profit centers. This wasn't just plantation owners. This was the entire economy. Physicians tracked pregnancies like inventory. Lawyers wrote contracts selling unborn babies. Ministers preached sermons justifying rape as God's will. The whole system was complicit. You'll learn why families were destroyed by design and how that trauma lives in your DNA today. You'll understand why you might struggle with trust, with abandonment, with forming lasting relationships. It's not a character flaw. It's generational trauma from a system that deliberately tore families apart for 250 years. This isn't ancient history buried in dusty books. This affected your great-great-grandmother. If your family came from Virginia, Maryland, or Kentucky, this is your story. Your ancestors survived this industrial-scale dehumanization. And they never told you because they were taught to be ashamed. But there's no shame in surviving genocide. There's only glory. Your grandmother's pain wasn't random. Your family's broken connections weren't coincidence. They were policy. Designed, implemented, profited from. And after this video, you'll never see the American dream the same way again. Because you'll understand, it was built on your nightmare. Let me take you back to 1807. Thomas Jefferson. The man who wrote all men are created equal, while raping his 14-year-old slave, Sally Hemings, signed a law that would go into effect on January 1st, 1808. The act prohibiting importation of slaves. It banned bringing enslaved Africans into the United States. And white America celebrated. They patted themselves on the back. Look at us, they said. We're ending the slave trade. We're making progress. But here's what they don't tell you in school. The cotton gin had just been invented. Eli Whitney created it in 1793, and it revolutionized cotton production. Suddenly, one person could clean 50 pounds of cotton a day instead of 1 pound. Cotton became gold. The Deep South, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, they exploded with cotton plantations. And cotton required massive amounts of labor, backbreaking, endless, brutal labor. Before 1808, if a plantation owner in Mississippi needed more slaves, he'd buy them from the Atlantic slave trade. Ships would bring them from Africa. But now that pipeline was cut off. So where would the Deep South get the hundreds of thousands of enslaved people they needed to feed the cotton boom? The answer should horrify you. They would breed them. Right here, in America, on American soil, using enslaved women as human incubators. The Upper South had a problem too. Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, they'd been growing tobacco for generations. But tobacco farming depleted the soil. By the early 1800s, their land was exhausted. Crops were failing. The economy was collapsing. These states needed a new cash crop, and they found one. Human beings. They would transform from an agricultural economy to a slave-breeding economy. They would produce enslaved people the way farmers produce livestock and sell them south for enormous profit. Let me give you a specific example. In 1787, 20 years before the ban, Moses Austin placed an advertisement in a Richmond newspaper. Moses Austin, the father of Stephen Austin, who would later found Texas. His ad read, "Wanted to purchase 100 Negroes from 12 to 30 years of age, for which a good price will be given. To be sent out of state." Out of state. He wasn't even hiding it. He was buying people specifically to export them, to sell them away from their families. This was already happening before the ban. The ban just made it official policy. From 1808 to 1861, an estimated 54,000 enslaved Africans were still smuggled into the United States illegally. 54,000. But millions were produced domestically. Born into slavery. Born to be sold. Born because their mothers were systematically raped to increase the slave population. Think about this for a moment. They couldn't legally import Africans anymore. So they turned black women into breeding stock instead. They didn't end slavery. They industrialized it. They made it self-sustaining. They made it American. Now let me show you exactly how this system worked. Because this wasn't random. This wasn't just individual slaveholders being cruel. This was organized. This was economics. This was policy. First, forced reproduction. Enslaved women were raped starting as young as 13 years old. 13. Children. They were forced to have sexual relations with enslaved men chosen by the slaveholder, or the slaveholder himself would rape them. This wasn't about lust. This was about profit. Every baby born was worth money. A lot of money. Slaveholders created incentive systems. If an enslaved woman had many children, she might receive small rewards. An extra piece of cloth, a little more food, slightly less brutal beatings. These weren't kindnesses. They were breeding incentives. The same way you'd feed a pregnant cow better to ensure a healthy calf. And if a woman didn't have children, if she was barren or resistant, she was punished. Sold away. Worked harder. Because a woman who couldn't produce more slaves had less value. There was a legal doctrine called partus sequitur ventrum. It's Latin. It means that which is brought forth follows the womb. In plain English, it meant that a child's legal status followed the mother's status. If your mother was enslaved, you were automatically enslaved, even if your father was the white slaveholder. This law made rape profitable. A white man could rape his slave, produce a child, and that child would be his property. His own child. His property. sold for cash. Let me give you the numbers. An enslaved woman could be forced to give birth to 10 to 15 children in her lifetime. In 1859, a healthy enslaved child sold for between $250 and $1,750. In today's money, adjusted for inflation, that's $8,749 to $61,244 per child. Per child. If a woman had 12 children and they all survived to selling age, that's between $105,000 and $735,000 in profit from one woman's body. That's why they did it. That's why they systematized it. Now doctors were involved. White physicians monitored enslaved women's pregnancies like they were managing livestock. They developed techniques in gynecology by experimenting on enslaved women without anesthesia, without consent, without humanity. A doctor named James Marion Sims, called the father of modern gynecology, performed brutal experimental surgeries on enslaved women, operating on them over and over while they screamed in pain. He's celebrated in medical history. His victims don't even have names in most textbooks. Physicians tracked natural increase the way a business tracks inventory. They kept ledgers. They recorded birth rates. They calculated projected profits based on how many babies would be born in the next 5 years. Pregnancy wasn't a human experience. It was a business projection. And then there was the domestic slave trade, the internal trafficking network that moved human beings from breeding states to buying states. Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri. These were the exporting states, the breeding grounds. Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas. These were the importing states, the destinations, the cotton fields, the death camps. Richmond, Virginia became one of the largest slave trading centers in North America. Alexandria, Virginia, just across the river from the nation's capital, had massive slave pens where hundreds of people were held before being sold south. In the shadow of the Capitol building, they were selling human beings, and everybody knew. Congressmen walked past slave auctions on their way to vote. Between 1808 and 1860, more than 1 million people were sold down the river. That phrase, sold down the river, it comes from this. Being sold from the Upper South down the Mississippi River to the Deep South was a death sentence. It meant you'd never see your family again. It meant you'd work yourself to death in a cotton field. Everyone knew what it meant. And they did it anyway. For profit. Let me show you a specific advertisement. This is real. Thomas L. Fraser and Company Slave Mart in Montgomery, Alabama, advertised in 1859. We always have on hand a large and well-selected stock of Negroes, consisting of field hands, house servants, mechanics, cooks, seamstresses, washers, ironers, etc. We will also have a large number of boys and girls on hand. Boys and girls, children, advertised like furniture. Large stock on hand. Well selected. These were babies. Somebody's son. Somebody's daughter. Sold like chairs. Pause for a second. Let that image sit in your mind. A newspaper advertisement listing children for sale. Large stock on hand. A warehouse full of stolen children waiting to be purchased. And this was normal. This was legal. This was America. Now let me tell you about what this did to families. Because that's where the real evil lives. Not just in the economics, in the destruction of the most sacred human bond. The bond between parent and child. 50% of all enslaved people were separated from a spouse or a parent at some point in their lives. 50%. Half. 1 in 4 people sold in the domestic slave trade were children, babies, toddlers, young kids ripped away from their mothers and fathers and sold to strangers hundreds of miles away. More than half of enslaved people in the Upper South were separated from a parent or a child. 1/3 of all marriages were destroyed by forced migration. Let me paint you a picture of what this looked like. March 1859, Savannah, Georgia, an event that came to be known as the Weeping Time. A man named Pierce Mies Butler, a wealthy plantation owner, had gambled away his fortune. So he decided to sell his slaves to pay his debts. 436 people. Men, women, children, infants, 30 babies. He sold them all over 2 rainy days at a racetrack. Families were torn apart on the auction block. A mother with 5 adult children sold for $6,180 total. That's $216,277 in today's money. A family sold like horses. Couples who had planned to marry were separated. One bought by a man from Alabama, the other sent to Mississippi, never to see each other again. Witnesses described mothers throwing themselves on the ground, begging the auctioneer, begging the buyers, "Please don't take my child. Please let me keep just one baby." And they were ignored. Children screamed for their mothers. Husbands tried to fight and were beaten unconscious. And when it was over, 436 people were shackled and shipped to different states, and most of them never saw their families again. Now imagine being a child in this system. Imagine growing up hearing the adults whisper at night, "Who's going to be sold? Will mama get to stay with us? Will daddy be taken?" Through that fear, through those whispered conversations, children began to understand what they were. Property. Slaves. And being a slave meant that at any moment, without warning, you could be sold away from everyone you loved. Even small children were sold without their parents. Infants were taken from their mother's arms. The records don't talk about families. They talk about merchandise. A 5-year-old girl listed in a sale document. No mention of her mother. No mention of her name sometimes. Just one Negro girl, 5 years old, healthy. Sold for $300. Imagine being 6 years old and watching your mother on her knees, begging a white man in a suit, "Please, sir, just let me keep one of my babies. Just one." And watching him shake his head and walk away counting his money. That's the America they don't teach in school. That's the history they erased. That's your story. That's what your ancestors survived. Now let me show you how Virginia became the engine of this nightmare. Because Virginia wasn't just participating in slave breeding. Virginia was the capital, the headquarters, the most prolific breeding state in American history. At the end of the 18th century, Virginia's economy was in trouble. They abolished laws called entail in 1776 and primogeniture in 1785. These were laws that kept large plantations together across generations. Without them, plantations were divided up among heirs, getting smaller and less profitable. At the same time, tobacco farming had destroyed the soil. Yields were dropping. Profits were disappearing. Virginia needed a new economic model. They found it in human beings. Instead of growing crops, they would grow slaves, breed them, raise them, and sell them south. And it worked. Horrifyingly, it worked. From 1790 to 1860, more than 1 million enslaved people were sold from Virginia to the lower South. 1 million. 2/3 of those sales happened through organized markets in cities like Richmond and Alexandria. This wasn't informal. This was industry. The term they used was natural increase. It sounds innocent, doesn't it? Natural. Like it just happened on its own. Like the slave population grew naturally the way a garden grows. But there was nothing natural about it. Natural increase was a euphemism for systematic forced reproduction, for rape, for breeding farms, for treating human beings like animals. Slaveholders in Virginia had a direct financial interest in the reproduction of their slaves. Every baby born increased their wealth, so they created conditions to maximize births. They forced young women to have children as quickly as possible. They separated enslaved families, strategically selling away older children to make room for new babies. They raped, they coerced, they incentivized, all to increase the birth rate. Virginia's model was unique in the Western Hemisphere. Other slave societies in the Caribbean and South America had such brutal conditions that the enslaved population didn't naturally reproduce. Slaveholders there worked people to death and just imported new slaves from Africa. But Virginia couldn't do that after 1808, so they developed a self-sustaining system, a domestic breeding program, the only large-scale slave breeding system in the New World. Every child born in Virginia was a profit center. A baby girl was a future breeder. A baby boy was future labor or sale value. Slaveholders bragged to each other about their stock. They compared breeding rates the way farmers compare crop yields. My slaves had 15 births this year. How many did yours have? It was competitive. It was business. It was monstrous. And here's a specific example that shows you how organized this was. In the 1850s, a slaveholder could advertise in a Richmond newspaper looking to purchase Negroes aged 12 to 30 for export. 12 years old. Children. And the ads specified for export, for sale out of state. Everyone knew what this meant. They were buying children to sell them away from their parents. And it was so common, so accepted, that they advertised it in the newspaper like they were selling furniture. Virginia wasn't the birthplace of presidents, though they taught you that in school. Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. Virginia was the birthplace of America's most profitable crime. Turning black babies into cash. Turning black women's bodies into factories. Building an entire state economy on rape and family destruction. That's the real history of Virginia. And they never taught you that. Did they? Now, you might be thinking, was this just Virginia? Was this just one state's evil? No, this was systematic across the entire Upper South. Let me show you the pattern, because once you see it, you'll understand this wasn't accidents. This was policy. This was America's business model. Let's start with Maryland, Virginia's sister state in crime. Maryland followed the exact same trajectory. In the late 1700s, Maryland's tobacco economy collapsed, just like Virginia's. The soil was exhausted. Profits disappeared. And just like Virginia, Maryland made a choice. They would switch from growing tobacco to growing human beings. Maryland became the second largest exporting state after Virginia. Baltimore, Maryland's biggest city, transformed into a major slave trading hub. It competed directly with Richmond for the title of slave sale capital of America. Ships left Baltimore Harbor regularly packed with enslaved people headed to New Orleans. Slave pens lined the streets near the harbor, and everyone pretended not to notice. Enslaved women in Maryland faced the same systematic rape as Virginia, the same forced breeding, the same incentive structures. Have more babies get slightly better treatment. Resist get punished. The birth rate among enslaved people in Maryland was carefully tracked and maximized. This was economics, not accidents. Hundreds of thousands of enslaved people were sold from Maryland to the Deep South between 1808 and 1860. Entire communities were emptied out, families destroyed, children sold south, and Maryland got rich doing it. The state's economy stabilized. Wealthy families maintained their status, all built on selling human beings. Frederick Douglass was born in Maryland in 1818. He watched this system firsthand. He described seeing his siblings sold away when he was a child. He barely knew his mother because she'd been hired out to a different plantation and could only visit him at night, walking 12 miles after a full day of work. She died when he was 7. He wasn't allowed to attend her funeral. That was normal in Maryland. That was life under the breeding system. Maryland wasn't less evil than the Deep South. Maryland was the factory that supplied the Deep South. Maryland was where they manufactured the people who would die in Mississippi cotton fields. Don't let anyone tell you Maryland was a border state, a compromise state, a moderate state. Maryland was a breeding ground. Now, let's talk about Kentucky. Kentucky entered the Union in 1792 as a slave state. Instantly, it became an exporting state. Kentucky had a strategic advantage. It sat right on the Ohio River with easy access to the Mississippi. That meant easy transportation. You could put enslaved people on a boat in Kentucky and ship them straight down to New Orleans. Kentucky slaveholders took full advantage. Kentucky operated the same system: forced reproduction, family separation, systematic sale of children. The state specialized in selling what they called young stock. Children between 8 and 15 years old enough to work, young enough to be controlled, young enough to forget their families. Kentucky traders advertised young stock at premium prices. The pattern was identical to Virginia and Maryland. Slaveholders encouraged forced and coerced reproduction. They tracked birth rates. They calculated profits. They sold children south. Between 1820 and 1860, tens of thousands of enslaved people were exported from Kentucky to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. Tens of thousands. Families ripped apart. Children sold for profit. And here's something they really don't teach you. Kentucky also smuggled slaves west into Missouri and Arkansas during their territorial periods. This wasn't just north to south trade. This was expansion. Spreading the system, infecting new territories with the slavery virus. Kentucky was a hub, a distribution center, a breeding farm, and a trafficking corridor all in one. Let's move to North Carolina and Tennessee. Smaller players, but fully participating in the same evil system. North Carolina exported tens of thousands of enslaved people to Georgia and Alabama. The state's eastern plantations struggled economically, so they sold their enslaved population south. Same story. Failed agriculture. Pivoted to human trafficking. Tennessee admitted to the Union in 1796, immediately joined the slave exporting system. Tennessee sent enslaved people to Mississippi and Louisiana. The state sat between the Upper South and the Deep South geographically, and it played that role economically too. A pipeline, a corridor, a supply chain for human misery. In both North Carolina and Tennessee, you saw the same advertisements. Wanted young breeding stock. Needed Negro families for sale. The same incentives for reproduction. The same forced separations. 40 to 50% of children in these states were separated from their parents before age 10. 40 to 50%. Almost half. Imagine growing up knowing you had a coin flip's chance of being sold away from your mother. That was childhood for enslaved people in North Carolina and Tennessee. Now let's talk about Missouri. Missouri's story shows you how late this evil continued, how it spread west. Missouri applied for statehood in 1819. The country fought over whether it would be slave or free. They created the Missouri Compromise in 1820. Missouri entered as a slave state. Maine entered as a free state. And slavery was banned north of the 36-30 line in future territories. They called it a compromise. They called it balance. It was expansion of the breeding system. The moment Missouri became a state in 1821, it became an exporting state. Missouri slaveholders sold enslaved people to Arkansas and Texas. They shipped people down the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. And just like every other Upper South state, Missouri operated breeding farms, forced reproduction, family separation, sale of children, the whole system. Here's the irony they don't teach you. The Missouri Compromise is presented in textbooks as this great political achievement. Balance, fairness, avoiding conflict. But what it actually did was open up a massive new territory to slave breeding and slave trading. It created a whole new state where black families could be destroyed for profit. That's what compromise meant. Compromising black humanity for white economic expansion. So now you've seen it. Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri. Every single state in the Upper South did the exact same thing. The exact same system, the exact same crime. Let me spell out the pattern so there's no confusion. Step 1, economic decline. Traditional agriculture fails. Tobacco, wheat, whatever they were growing, the soil gives out, or the market crashes. Step 2, pivot to human breeding. Instead of growing crops, breed slaves. Force enslaved women to have as many children as possible. Step 3, systematic family destruction. Sell the children south, rip them away from their parents, ship them to the Deep South. Step 4, profit. Use the money from selling human beings to maintain wealth status and power. Every state did it. Every state. This wasn't a few bad slaveholders. This wasn't isolated incidents. This was policy. This was the economy. This was the entire Upper South's business model for 50 years. They turned black women into breeding machines in Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Missouri. They ripped over 1 million children from their mothers' arms. They sold babies, like livestock, in Richmond, Baltimore, Louisville, and St. Louis. They made billions of dollars in profit. Billions. In today's money, trillions. And every single time they called it natural increase. Like it was nature. Like it just happened. Like black women just naturally had lots of babies, and those babies just naturally ended up sold to Mississippi. There was nothing natural about it. It was rape. It was trafficking. It was genocide. It was the organized destruction of black families for economic gain. Do you see the pattern? Now? Do you see how big this was? This wasn't the South. This was 6 states running industrial scale, human breeding operations for half a century. This was the American economy. Cotton built on breeding. Wealth built on rape. Power built on destroying families. And here's what makes it even worse. They built the wealthiest nation on earth doing this. American economic dominance in the 19th century came from cotton. Cotton exports made America rich, and cotton was picked by enslaved people who were born on breeding farms in Virginia and sold to plantations in Alabama. The entire system from beginning to end was built on black bodies, black wombs, black children, black families torn apart. They built America on your ancestors' backs, on your great-great-grandmother's rape, on your great-great-grandfather being sold at age 9. And then they erased it from every textbook. They pretended it never happened. They taught you that slavery was bad, sure, but not this bad. Not systematic, not industrial, not organized. They lied. But now you know. Now you see the pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri. Say those names. Remember those names. Those are the states that ran breeding farms. Those are the states that sold your ancestors. Those are the states that owe you a debt they've never paid. Now let me show you how they covered this up. Because the crime itself was evil, but the cover-up, the erasure, the generations of lies, that's evil on another level. They didn't just destroy black families. They destroyed the evidence. They destroyed the memory. They destroyed the truth. And they did it systematically, just as systematically as they ran the breeding farms. Let's start with physical destruction. After the Civil War ended in 1865, after slavery was abolished, you'd think there'd be records, right? Documents, sale receipts, auction records, slave pen ledgers, breeding logs, all the paperwork from 50 years of selling over 1 million human beings. Where is it? Most of it's gone. destroyed, burned, disappeared. Many southern states deliberately destroyed slave trading records after the war. They knew what they'd done. They knew how it looked. They knew future generations would judge them. So they burned the evidence. County courthouses mysteriously caught fire. Records rooms were cleaned out. Documents were lost. Oops. Sorry. No record of selling your great-great-grandmother. No proof we separated you from your family. No documentation of the rape. It's just gone. Auction house records the detailed logs of who was sold for how much, to whom those documents were systematically destroyed, especially records involving children. You know why? Because selling children looked bad, even to people who accepted slavery. Even slaveholders knew that trafficking 8-year-olds was hard to defend. So those records got burned first. Slave pen operators destroyed their business records. The bills of sale, the inventory lists, the letters, arranging purchases gone. In some cities, entire buildings were torn down. The physical spaces where people were held before being sold, demolished, erased. If there's no building, there's no memorial. If there's no memorial, people forget. And cemeteries. Enslaved people's burial grounds were plowed over, built on top of, paved over with roads. In Richmond, in Alexandria, in Baltimore, in Louisville, there are parking lots and shopping centers built on top of slave cemeteries, literally built on top of bodies. The dead can't testify if you bury them under concrete. The goal was simple. If there's no physical evidence, future generations can't prove how bad it was. You can tell your grandchildren, but if there's no documents, no buildings, no graves, who's going to believe you? They made it. So black people's testimony was the only evidence. And then they made sure nobody believed black people's testimony. Let me be specific. In Lumpkin's jail in Richmond, one of the largest slave prisons in Virginia, thousands of people were held before being sold south. After the war, the building was torn down. For decades, the site was empty land. Then they built a school on it. For 100 years, children went to school on top of a slave jail, and nobody told them. Nobody marked it. No plaque, no memorial, nothing. They found the foundations during construction in 2008. 2008. That's 17 years ago. For 143 years, they hid it. Now let's talk about legal suppression. How the law was used to cover up the crime and prevent justice. During slavery, there were laws that made it impossible to document the horror or prosecute the criminals. After slavery, there were laws that made it impossible to get justice or reparations. During slavery, it was illegal to teach enslaved people to read and write in most southern states. You know why. Because if enslaved people could write, they could document. They could keep records. They could write down names, dates, crimes. They could leave testimony. The slaveholders knew this. So they made literacy illegal. The punishment for teaching a slave to read could be whipping, imprisonment, or death. They wanted to make sure the only version of history that survived was the version white people wrote. Enslaved people also couldn't testify in court against white people. Think about what that means. If a slaveholder raped an enslaved woman, she couldn't testify. If a trader kidnapped an enslaved child, the child couldn't testify. If an overseer murdered an enslaved man, witnesses couldn't testify. Legally, their voices didn't exist. Every crime was invisible in the legal system. There was a specific law called partus sequitur ventrum that I mentioned earlier. It made children follow the condition of the mother. This law made rape legally profitable and legally invisible. A white man could rape his slave, and the child would be his property. There was no crime, no rape, no kidnapping, just business. The law made it legal. And here's the most evil part. Rape of an enslaved woman wasn't a crime in most slave states. Not legally. You couldn't prosecute it. She was property. You can't rape property. That was the legal logic. So decades of systematic sexual violence, tens of thousands of rapes, millions of rapes. None of it was ever prosecuted. None of it was ever documented as a crime. Legally, it never happened. After the Civil War, after abolition, you'd think there'd be trials, right? Justice, reparations. Instead, they passed black codes. These were laws in southern states in 1865 and 1866 that restricted the rights of formerly enslaved people. The laws made it almost impossible for black people to own property, to testify in court, to sign contracts, to sue for damages. So if you were freed in 1865 and you wanted to sue the man who sold your children in 1850, you couldn't. Black codes prevented it. If you wanted to reclaim property that was stolen, you couldn't. If you wanted compensation for 250 years of unpaid labor, you couldn't. The law blocked it. Then there were statutes of limitations, laws that said you could only sue for something within a certain number of years after it happened. Well, if slavery ended in 1865 and you tried to sue in 1875, they'd say, sorry, too late, statute of limitations, even though you were enslaved and couldn't sue earlier, even though the crime continued for generations. Too late. Case dismissed. And there was no law requiring the preservation of slavery records, no Freedom of Information Act, no historical preservation requirement. So when states and counties and businesses destroyed records, it wasn't illegal. It was just, oops, we lost them. Sorry, can't help you find your family, can't help you prove what happened. The records are gone. This meant that families separated by slavery had almost no way to reunite. After 1865, millions of formerly enslaved people tried desperately to find their children, their parents, their spouses. They put ads in newspapers. They traveled hundreds of miles on foot. They asked everyone they met, have you seen my son? Have you seen my wife? And most of them never found each other because the records were destroyed, because the law didn't help, because the system that separated them made sure they'd stay separated forever. Now let's talk about educational erasure, how they removed this from every textbook, every classroom, every history lesson for 150 years. This might be the most insidious part, because it's one thing to commit a crime. It's another thing to make sure nobody ever learns about it. From the 1870s through the 1960s, textbooks in the South taught something called the lost cause narrative. This was a lie, a myth that said slavery wasn't that bad. It said enslaved people were happy. It said slaveholders were kind. It said the Civil War wasn't about slavery, it was about states' rights. All lies. But that's what they taught children for 90 years. In these textbooks, enslaved people were called servants. The book said they were well cared for. They said families stayed together. They said slaveholders treated them like family. Every single sentence was a lie. But millions of children, black and white, learned this lie as history. They grew up thinking slavery was unfortunate, but not monstrous. Wrong, but not evil. A mistake, but not a crime against humanity. And here's what they never mentioned. Not once. Not in any textbook. Slave breeding. The domestic slave trade. The 1 million people sold down the river. The systematic separation of families. The rape. The breeding farms. The sale of children. None of it. Zero. It wasn't in the textbooks. They talked about plantations. They talked about cotton. They might mention that some slaves were sold, but they never ever described the industrial scale, the systematic nature, the breeding operations, the trafficking networks, the economic incentives for rape. They erased all of it. When they did mention the domestic slave trade, they called it migration. Migration. Like enslaved people chose to move. Like families decided together to relocate from Virginia to Mississippi. Like it was voluntary. They used passive voice. Enslaved people were moved. Not white slaveholders sold them. not traders kidnapped children. Moved, migrated, relocated. Language that hides violence. Let me give you a specific example. Virginia textbooks in the 1950s described slavery like this. Virginia was a pleasant land for most people. The Negroes were generally well treated and happy. They were allowed to sing and dance. Life was not hard for them. That's a direct quote from a textbook in the 1950s. Your parents might have learned from that book. That's what they were taught. Those textbooks never mentioned that Virginia sold over 1 million people south. Never mentioned breeding farms. Never mentioned rape. Never mentioned children being sold. They said Negroes were happy and life was not hard, while erasing the worst crime in Virginia's history. And even after the Civil Rights Movement, even after textbooks started admitting slavery was wrong, they still didn't teach the details. Modern textbooks might say some families were separated by sale. Some, like it was occasional, like it was rare, not 50%, not 1 million people. Some. The result is that generations of Americans, black and white, grew up not knowing this happened. Your grandparents didn't know the full story because they weren't taught. Your parents didn't know because they weren't taught. You didn't know until right now because they didn't teach you. Multiple generations kept in ignorance, on purpose. Even today, in 2025, many schools still don't teach detailed information about slave breeding and the domestic slave trade. It's considered too controversial, too divisive, too uncomfortable. So they skip it. They teach slavery in general terms. They don't get specific. They don't name Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky as breeding states. They don't explain the economics. They don't show the scale. They keep you ignorant. Now let's talk about media manipulation. How newspapers, movies, TV shows, and popular culture distorted and erased this history. During slavery, newspapers were fully complicit. They ran advertisements for slave sales. They published ads looking to buy young breeding stock. They announced auction dates. They were part of the system. But here's how they wrote about it. They used business language, clean language, clinical language, prime stock, young breeders, natural increase, field hands, likely Negroes. They made it sound like commerce, not crime, like business, not horror. The language hid the violence. When enslaved people resisted, when they ran away, when they fought back, newspapers called them criminals. Dangerous, violent, runaway slave reward for capture, dangerous Negro. They made the victims sound like villains. They made the people seeking freedom sound like threats. That shaped how white readers saw slavery. Not as violence against black people, but as black people being violent and needing to be controlled. After slavery, popular culture continued the lies. Movies like Gone with the Wind in 1939 romanticized the Old South, showed happy slaves, loyal servants, kind masters, beautiful plantations. It won Best Picture. It's considered a classic, and it's a lie from beginning to end. There's not one scene about breeding, not one scene about children being sold, not one moment of truth. For decades, Hollywood made movies showing slavery as not that bad. Enslaved people singing in the fields, smiling, joking, loyal to their masters. Every movie was propaganda, and millions of Americans watched these movies and thought, oh, slavery wasn't as bad as people say. The movies taught them to minimize the horror. Even documentaries were censored. As late as the 1990s, PBS and major networks avoided detailed discussion of slave breeding. They called it controversial. They said it was too graphic. They worried about offending viewers. So they softened it. They generalized it. They hid it. And here's the language trick they still use today. Modern articles say enslaved people were encouraged to have children. Encouraged, like it was a suggestion. Like slaveholders politely asked, and enslaved women happily agreed. Not rape, not force, not coercion. Encouraged. That word hides violence. It hides crime. It lets readers think it wasn't that bad. Or they say slave populations increased through natural reproduction. Natural. There's that word again. Natural increase. Natural reproduction. Making it sound like biology, not brutality. Making it sound like it just happened, not that it was forced. Language that erases rape. Even when modern historians and journalists write about this, they often victim blame. They'll say enslaved people had large families, like it was a choice. Not enslaved women were raped and forced to bear children. Just, they had large families. You see how that shifts responsibility, how it makes it sound like enslaved people's decision, not slaveholders' crime. See how language hides violence, encouraged to have children versus raped to produce babies. Same thing, same crime, different story. One makes you uncomfortable, one lets you keep scrolling. That's why they use the soft language, to let white America sleep at night, to let the crime stay buried. But the truth is coming out now. Historians like Edward Baptist Ned and Constance Sublette, Dana Ramey Berry, they've written books exposing all of this. The American Slave Coast. The half has never been told. The price for their pound of flesh. These books document everything. The breeding, the sales, the rape, the family destruction. The evidence is overwhelming. And now you know. Now you've seen how they covered it up. Physical destruction of evidence, legal suppression of justice, educational erasure from textbooks, media manipulation of the narrative. Every institution participated. Government, schools, churches, newspapers, movies, all of them working together to bury the truth. But they failed because you're watching this video, because the truth survived. Because your ancestors' testimony survived, even when they tried to silence it. The truth is out, and it's never going back in the box. Now let me show you why this matters today. Right now, in 2025, because some people want to say, that was a long time ago, why are you still talking about it? Let it go, move on. But you can't move on from a crime that never stopped. You can't heal from a wound that's still bleeding. And the theft, the destruction, the violence, it never stopped. It just changed forms. Let's talk about the wealth gap. Right now today, the median white household in America has a net worth of $188,000. The median black household has a net worth of $24,000. White families have nearly 8 times the wealth of black families. 8 times. And they want you to think that's because black people don't work hard, because black people make bad decisions, because black people don't value education or saving money. They want you to blame yourself. But let me show you the real reason. Let's do some math. In 1859, right before the Civil War, an enslaved person sold for an average of $800. That's the middle range. Some sold for less, some for much more. $800 in 1859 equals about $28,000 today when you adjust for inflation. But that's just the sale price. That doesn't count the value of their labor. An enslaved person working in a cotton field produced thousands of dollars worth of cotton every year. For free. No wages, no compensation, just forced labor. If you calculate the total value of labor stolen from one enslaved person over a lifetime, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in today's money. Now multiply that by the 4 million people enslaved in 1860. Multiply that by the 250 years of slavery. The total wealth stolen from black people is estimated between $12 and $100 trillion. Trillion with a T. But let's make it personal. Let's talk about your family specifically. If your ancestors came from Virginia in the 1850s, there's a very high chance they were sold south. Let's say your great-great-grandmother was sold in 1855. She was 15 years old. She sold for $1,000, which was high, but not unusual for a young woman. That's $35,000 in today's money. That money went to a white family in Virginia. Not to her, not to her children, to the person who sold her. Now, if that $1,000 had gone to her, to her family, and they'd been able to save it, invest it, buy land with it, pass it down through generations, do you know what it would be worth today? With compound interest, with investments, with property appreciation, that $1,000 from 1855 would be worth millions today. Millions. That's your stolen inheritance. That's what was taken from your family. But it's worse than that, because it wasn't just the sale price. Your great-great-great-grandmother then worked for free for 10 more years until slavery ended in 1865. Let's say she produced $5,000 worth of cotton in that decade, all unpaid, all stolen. Then add her children. If she had 5 children who were also enslaved and also worked for free, that's more stolen labor, more stolen wealth. Then slavery ended in 1865. Did they give her the land she worked? No. Did they pay her the back wages she was owed? No. Did they give her anything? No. She was freed with nothing. $0, 0 land, 0 compensation. Meanwhile, the white family that owned her kept everything. The land, the house, the wealth, all of it built on her labor. And then for the next 100 years, from 1865 to 1965, Jim Crow laws prevented her descendants from building wealth. Couldn't buy land in white areas, couldn't get loans from banks, couldn't attend good schools, couldn't get good jobs. Sharecropping kept them in debt. Lynching kept them afraid. And any time black people did manage to build wealth, white mobs destroyed it. So by 1965, 100 years after slavery, your family still had nothing. Because every time you tried to build, they tore it down. Every time you saved, they stole it. Every time you succeeded, they destroyed it. That's why there's a wealth gap. Not because your family didn't work hard. Because your family's wealth was systematically stolen for 400 years and never returned. Let me give you a specific example. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. Black Wall Street, the Greenwood District. It was the wealthiest black community in America. Black-owned banks, theaters, schools, hospitals, grocery stores, restaurants. Over 300 businesses. More millionaires per capita than anywhere else in the country. Black people in Tulsa had done everything right. They'd worked hard. They'd saved. They'd invested. They'd built generational wealth. And on May 31st and June 1st, 1921, a white mob burned it all down. 35 city blocks destroyed. 300 people murdered. Every business burned. Every home destroyed. 1,200 homes gone. And afterward, the city changed the fire codes, so black people couldn't rebuild. Insurance companies refused to pay claims. The government did nothing. And for 75 years, they erased it from textbooks. Your parents probably never learned about it in school. That's the pattern. Every time black people build wealth, they destroy it. Tulsa, 1921. Rosewood, Florida, 1923. Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898. Atlanta, 1906. East St. Louis, 1917. Over and over and over. Build, destroy. Build, destroy. And then they ask why there's a wealth gap. They know why. They created it. So when they say the median white household has $188,000 and the median black household has $24,000, now you know why? It's not because black people are bad with money. It's because white people stole black people's money for 400 years and never gave it back. It's because every time black people accumulated wealth, white people burned it down. It's because the system was designed to keep you poor. This isn't ancient history. Your grandmother lived through this. If your grandmother was born in 1920, her grandmother was born around 1860, right during slavery, right during the breeding era. That's 2 generations. Your grandmother's grandmother might have been sold as a child, might have been raped, might have watched her children sold away, and your grandmother grew up hearing those stories, carrying that trauma, living with that poverty. And here's what makes me angry. They want to act like this is so long ago. But if your grandmother is alive today, she lived through segregation. She lived through not being able to vote. She lived through being denied loans because of her skin color. She lived through watching white families get rich off government programs like the GI Bill and the Federal Housing Administration, while black families were excluded. Your grandmother watched white families build wealth in the 1950s and 60s, while her family was legally blocked from doing the same. So when you struggle to buy a house, that's why. When you have student loans and no family wealth to fall back on, that's why. When you work 2 jobs and still can't get ahead, that's why. It's not your fault. It's not because you're not working hard enough. It's because they stole trillions of dollars from your family and never paid it back. Now let's talk about reparations, because this is where people get uncomfortable. They say, I didn't own slaves, why should I pay? Slavery was so long ago. You can't repay something from that long ago. Get over it. Move on. All the excuses. Let me destroy every single one. First slavery wasn't that long ago. I just showed you 2 generations. Your grandmother's grandmother. That's not ancient history. That's family history. That's yesterday. Second, the theft didn't stop in 1865. Jim Crow lasted until 1968. Legally enforced segregation. Legally enforced discrimination. That's 57 years ago. Your parents lived through that. Redlining, the practice of denying mortgages to black families, didn't end until 1968, 57 years ago. That's in living memory. Third, the theft is still happening. Mass incarceration is slavery by another name. The 13th Amendment banned slavery except as punishment for crime. So what did they do? They made everything a crime for black people, arrested black men at higher rates, gave them longer sentences, put them in prisons where they work for pennies an hour. Same forced labor, same profit motive, just new paperwork. Gentrification is land theft by another name. Every time black people build a neighborhood, make it nice, create community, white developers come in and push them out, raise the rents, buy the properties, force black families out. And where do they go? Farther out. Poorer neighborhoods, starting over again. It's the same pattern as slave sales. You build, they take. You build, they take. So don't tell me this is old history. This is current events. The theft is ongoing. And that means reparations aren't about the past. They're about right now. Now let me address the I didn't own slaves argument. You're right. You personally didn't own slaves. But you benefit from the wealth that slavery created. Every road, every bridge, every government building in America was built with wealth generated by slavery. The entire economy was built on stolen black labor. Cotton exports made America rich, and that wealth got passed down through generations of white families. If your great-great-grandfather owned slaves, sold slaves, or profited from slavery, he accumulated wealth. He bought land. He sent his kids to college. He passed down money. That wealth compounded over generations, even if your family didn't directly own slaves. If they were white in America, they benefited from a system that gave them access to loans, land jobs, and education that black families were denied. Black families got zero, less than zero. Negative wealth, debt, trauma, and no generational wealth to pass down. So yeah, you didn't own slaves, but you inherited the wealth they created, and we inherited the poverty they created. You got the benefit, we got the burden. That's why you owe. And here's the moral argument. The Bible is clear about restitution. Exodus 22 says, if someone steals, they must pay back double. Proverbs 13:22 says, the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. Luke 19:1. Zacchaeus paid back 4 times what he stole. The entire Bible says when you steal, you pay it back. You don't get to say, well, that was my great-great-grandfather who stole, not me. No. You pay back what was stolen. That's justice. That's righteousness. That's what God requires. Germany paid $89 billion in reparations to Holocaust survivors and their descendants. America paid $1.6 billion to Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II. But Black Americans, zero. For 250 years of slavery, 100 years of Jim Crow, and ongoing theft, $0 in reparations. Economists have calculated what's owed. If you add up all the stolen labor from 1619 to 1865, adjust for inflation, add interest, you get somewhere between $12 trillion and $100 trillion. Even if we take the low estimate and divide it by 40 million Black Americans, that's $300,000 per person. That's what's owed. Minimum. And don't say we can't afford it. America just spent trillions on wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Trillions on corporate bailouts. Trillions on tax cuts for billionaires. We can afford it. We choose not to pay. Because paying would require admitting the crime, admitting the debt, admitting that America's wealth is built on theft. So let me be clear. We are not asking for reparations. We are owed reparations. This isn't charity. This isn't a gift. This isn't a handout. This is repayment of a debt. You stole, you owe. Pay up. That's not radical. That's basic morality. That's justice. Now let me connect this history to current struggles, because everything you're dealing with today traces back to what I've been showing you. Mass incarceration, police brutality, gentrification, underfunded schools. All of it connects. Mass incarceration is modern slavery. The 13th Amendment says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist, except as punishment for crime. Except. That exception is a loophole big enough to drive the entire prison industrial complex through. So what happened? They criminalized blackness, made it illegal to be black in public. Vagrancy laws, loitering laws, stop and frisk. Arrested black people at massive rates for things white people do just as often, but don't get arrested for. Then they give black people longer sentences. A black man and a white man commit the same crime, the black man gets twice as long in prison. That's documented. That's proven. That's policy. And once you're in prison, you work for pennies, making products for corporations, fighting wildfires for $1 an hour. That's slavery. They just changed the name to corrections. And just like slave sales separated families, prison separates families today. A father gets arrested, his kids grow up without him. Same trauma, same broken families, same cycle. The pattern didn't change. The legal justification changed. Slavery to convict, leasing to mass incarceration. Same crime, different paperwork. Police brutality is the modern version of slave patrols. You know where police departments came from: slave patrols. Groups of white men who rode around catching runaway slaves and terrorizing black communities. After slavery ended, those patrols became police departments. Same people, same function. Control black bodies, use violence, no accountability. And the pattern is identical. Slave patrols could beat or kill enslaved people with no consequences. Modern police kill black people. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland. Philando Castile, hundreds more, and most of them never go to prison. No consequences. The badge changed. The violence didn't. Gentrification is modern land theft. Remember what I told you about Tulsa, about Rosewood, about every time black people built wealth, they destroyed it. That's still happening. It's just more subtle now. Black families move into a neighborhood, fix it up, create community, build businesses. Property values go up. Then developers notice. They start buying properties. Rents increase. Black families can't afford it anymore. They get pushed out. And who moves in wealthier, usually white families? It's the same theft. You build, they take. In Harlem, in Brooklyn, in Oakland, in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C., every major city. Black neighborhoods that were thriving get gentrified. Black families get displaced. And the wealth they created by improving the neighborhood, it goes to someone else. Same as Virginia selling your ancestor south after she increased the value of the plantation. Same theft, different language, and underfunded schools. You know why schools in black neighborhoods have less money, worse buildings, older textbooks, fewer resources? Because schools are funded by property taxes, and black neighborhoods have lower property values. Why? Because of redlining. Because banks wouldn't give mortgages to black families for decades, so black people couldn't buy homes in good areas. So black neighborhoods stayed poor. So property values stayed low. So property taxes stayed low. So schools stayed underfunded. It's all connected. Slavery led to no generational wealth. No wealth led to poor neighborhoods. Poor neighborhoods led to low property values. Low property values led to underfunded schools. Underfunded schools led to less opportunity. Less opportunity led to poverty. And they look at that poverty and say, see, black people just don't value education. When they created every single barrier, so if your family lived in Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, if your ancestors were sold south, if your great-great-grandmother was raped on a breeding farm, if your great-great-grandfather was sold at age 10, this is why you're struggling now. This is why your grandmother cleaned white people's houses even though she was brilliant. This is why your parents worked 2 jobs and still barely made it. This is why you have student loans and no family wealth to fall back on. It's not your fault. It's not because you're not smart enough or hard-working enough. It's because they stole everything from your family for 400 years and then blamed you for having nothing. That's the truth. That's your stolen inheritance. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But here's what I need you to understand. You are not a victim. Let me say that again. You are not a victim. You are a survivor. You are a descendant of people who endured the worst evil in human history and refused to die. That's who you are. Your great-great-grandmother was 13 years old when they first raped her. 13. A child. And they kept raping her for years. Forced her to have babies. Sold those babies away from her. Can you imagine that pain? Giving birth, knowing they're going to sell your child. Knowing you'll never see them again. That happened to her. Multiple times. And she survived. She kept breathing. Kept loving. Kept hoping. Kept fighting. Your great-great-grandfather was sold at age 9. Ripped away from his mother. Put on a boat or a wagon. Shipped to Mississippi or Alabama. Never saw his family again. Had to grow up alone. Enslaved. Beaten. Worked until his hands bled. And he survived. He grew up. He found love somehow. He had children. He passed down strength. He refused to let them break him. You exist because they survived. You're here because they were unbreakable. Every ancestor you have made it through slavery. Through Jim Crow. Through terrorism and violence and theft. and they pass their strength down to you. That strength is in your DNA. That resilience is in your blood. You are not weak. You are descended from warriors. They want you to see yourself as a victim, as poor, as struggling, as less than. But that's a lie. You are a survivor of genocide. You are an heir to stolen empires. You are the descendant of people who built wealth from nothing twice, 3 times, and had it stolen every time, and kept building. That's power. That's strength. That's divine purpose. Listen to me. Your poverty is not your fault. It was stolen. They took it. But your strength, your brilliance, your resilience, your capacity to love and create and build, they couldn't take that. They tried. For 400 years, they tried to break you. And they failed. You're still here. You're still building. You're still fighting. You're still breathing. That's victory. Reframe your identity. You're not poor because you failed. You're poor because you were robbed. There's a difference. Failure is internal. Robbery is external. You didn't do anything wrong. They did. And once you understand that once you shift from shame to righteous anger, everything changes. You stop blaming yourself and start demanding justice. You stop accepting poverty and start reclaiming wealth. You stop being a victim and start being a warrior. Your ancestors were extraordinary. Let me tell you what they did. After slavery ended in 1865, 4 million people were freed with nothing. No land, no money, no education in most cases. Nothing. And within 30 years, by 1900, black people owned millions of acres of land, had built thousands of businesses, had created schools and churches and communities from nothing in 30 years, while being terrorized by the KKK, while being denied rights, while being lynched. They did that. By 1920, Black Wall Street existed, the wealthiest black community in America. Millionaires, doctors, lawyers, business owners. In Tulsa, in Durham, in Atlanta, black people built empires, and every time white mobs burned them down. But here's what's important. They kept building. They didn't give up. They didn't accept defeat. They built and it was destroyed, and they built again. That's your lineage. Your ancestors fought armies and won. Robert F. Williams in Monroe, North Carolina, armed black men and defended their community against the KKK. The KKK came to terrorize, and black men with rifles ran them out of town. That happened. Ida B. Wells exposed lynching, risking her life, traveling the country, documenting every murder, demanding justice. Harriet Tubman made 13 trips back into slave states and freed over 70 people. 70. Walking into enemy territory again and again. That's courage. They did all of this while facing terrorism. The KKK burned their homes and churches. Police arrested them for existing. Mobs lynched them for looking at white people wrong. And they kept building, kept fighting, kept refusing to die. That strength is in your DNA. You carry their blood. You carry their fire. You carry their unbreakable will. When you wake up every morning and go to work despite systemic racism, you're channeling them. When you raise your children with dignity despite poverty, you're honoring them. When you demand justice despite threats, you are them. Their spirit lives in you. Never forget that. You are not separate from them. You are the continuation of their fight. You are the fulfillment of their prayers. You are the answer to their hopes. Your ancestors were not just slaves. They were healers who healed without medical degrees. Teachers who educated in secret, risking death to teach children to read. Engineers who built plantations and cities without blueprints or training. Warriors who fought without weapons. Lovers who loved despite being forbidden to marry. Parents who protected their children despite having no legal power. Artists who made beauty in hell. Preachers who kept faith when faith seemed impossible. They were fully, beautifully, powerfully human. And so are you. Don't let anyone tell you you're less than. Don't let poverty define you. Don't let struggle diminish you. You carry royal blood. You carry the blood of people who survived the unsurvivable. You carry the legacy of people who built empires from ashes. You are magnificent. Now let me tell you about your divine purpose. Because this isn't random. This isn't coincidence. God didn't bring you through the Middle Passage to abandon you. God didn't preserve you through slavery to forget you. God didn't keep you alive through Jim Crow without a reason. You're here for a purpose. Think about it. 12 million Africans were kidnapped and put on slave ships. 2 million died during the Middle Passage. 2 million drowned, starved, killed themselves, died of disease. But your ancestors survived. Why 10 million made it to the Americas? Most went to the Caribbean and Brazil, where they were worked to death within 7 years. Millions died. But your ancestors survived and had children. Why in America 250 years of slavery? Rape, murder, torture, disease, malnutrition. Most bloodlines ended, but yours didn't. Your family survived. Why? Then 100 years of Jim Crow, lynching, massacres, theft, economic violence, thousands of families destroyed. But yours made it. You are here. Why? Because God has a mission for you. Because you have a purpose. Because there's something you're supposed to do. Mission 1: reveal truth. They buried this history for 200 years, erased it from textbooks, hid it from your parents and grandparents. But God raised you up in a time when the truth is coming out. You're watching this video right now because God ordained it. This is your moment to learn what they tried to hide. And now that you know, you have a responsibility. Share this video. Tell your children. Tell your friends. Refuse to let them erase us again. You are a truth teller now. That's your calling. Mission 2: demand justice. Reparations isn't radical, it's biblical. Proverbs 13:22 says, "The wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous." They sinned, they stole, and that wealth is stored up for you. It's yours. God says so. Demand it. Don't be quiet. Don't be polite. Don't accept no. They owe you. God says they owe you. Demand what is yours. Mission 3: reclaim your legacy. Build businesses. Buy land. Create generational wealth. They try to keep you poor. Refuse. Break the cycle. Your ancestors built wealth 3 times and had it stolen 3 times. You build it a 4th time and protect it. Pass it down. Let your children inherit what you create. Let your grandchildren be millionaires. That's how you win. That's how you honor your ancestors. Build what they couldn't keep. And keep it. Mission 4: heal. The trauma of separation, of rape, of violence. It lives in your body. It's in your nervous system. It's why you might struggle with trust, or fear abandonment, or feel anxious for no reason. That's not weakness. That's generational trauma. Acknowledge it. Get therapy. Pray. Journal. Talk to elders. Heal yourself so you don't pass the trauma to your children. Break the cycle. That's sacred work. That's necessary work. God is with you. Psalm 37:28 says, "The Lord loves justice and will not forsake his faithful ones." You are his faithful one. He has not forsaken you. He will not forsake you. He sees what was stolen. He knows what you're owed, and he will deliver. Your ancestors prayed for freedom. God delivered. It took 250 years, but God delivered. Your grandparents prayed for civil rights. God delivered. It took 100 years of Jim Crow, but God delivered. Now, you pray for justice and reparations, and God will deliver. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but God keeps his promises, and justice is coming. You are not here by accident. You are here because God has a plan, a purpose, a mission, Walk in it. Speak truth. Demand justice. Build legacy. Heal your trauma. Pass down strength. You are free. Not because the law said so in 1865, but because God said so from the beginning. You were created in His image. You were created free. And no system can bind what God has loosed. Stand tall. You are a child of the Most High. You are a descendant of warriors. You are an heir to stolen kingdoms. You are brilliant. You are powerful. You are loved. And you are unstoppable. They tried to break you for 400 years. They failed. And they'll keep failing. Because God is with you. And if God is for you, who can be against you? Pause this video right now. I need to see something. If this truth shocked you, if you had no idea this breeding system existed, if they never taught you this in school, comment truth below. Let me see it. If you're angry that they erased this from history, if you're done with the lies, comment justice. And if you're ready to demand reparations, if you understand now that you are owed, comment we are owed. Let me see who's awake. Let me see who's ready. And hit that like button. Share this video. Send it to your parents who lived through segregation. Send it to your children who need to know their real history. Send it to your friends who think slavery was long ago and doesn't matter anymore. This is our story. They tried to bury it. We're digging it up. Don't let them silence us again. Now you know how they covered it up. Physical destruction, legal suppression, educational erasure, media lies, every institution working together to hide the truth. But the truth survived. Your ancestors' testimony survived, and now you're carrying it forward. You're part of the chain. You're a link between the past and the future. Don't break the chain. Pass it on. If you've made it this far, you're ready. You're awake. You're done with lies. And I have hundreds more stories like this. Subscribe to this channel right now. Turn on notifications. Because every week we're dropping another hidden history. Tulsa Race Massacre. Rosewood. The Red Summer of 1919. Black Wall Street. Armed resistance they erased. Every week a new revelation. Every week stolen history reclaimed. Tell your children this story. Sit them down tonight. Show them this video. Don't let them grow up in lies like we did. Don't let them get to 30, 40, 50 years old and then find out their history was stolen. Give them truth now. Let them grow up knowing who they are. Let them grow up proud. Let them grow up demanding justice. That's your responsibility as a parent, as an elder, as someone who knows. Share this with your church. Post it on Facebook. Send it in group chats. Text it to your family. Make it go viral. Because this isn't just information. This is ammunition. This is proof. This is evidence for reparations. This is the reason we're owed. Spread it everywhere. Let everyone see what they tried to hide. This isn't about revenge. This is about truth and justice. This isn't about hating white people. This is about exposing systems of oppression and demanding they be dismantled. This isn't about division. This is about unity through honesty. We can't heal what we don't acknowledge. We can't fix what we won't name. Truth unites. Lies divide. And we're choosing truth. You are part of this story. You have a choice right now. You can accept truth and fight for justice, or you can continue in deception and accept poverty. You can stand up and demand what's yours, or you can sit down and let them keep stealing. You can be a warrior like your ancestors, or you can be silent. Choose. Right now. What are you going to do? I'm telling you, choose truth. Choose justice. Choose freedom. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Join this movement. Because we're not stopping until every hidden story is told. We're not stopping until every lie is exposed. We're not stopping until reparations are paid. We're not stopping until justice is done. This is the dark history. This is your inheritance. Let's reclaim it together. Subscribe now. Don't miss the next revelation. Your ancestors are counting on you. Let's go. Let us pray. Father God, we come before you with heavy hearts and awakened minds. We thank you for preserving this truth through centuries of lies and erasure. We thank you that no matter how hard they tried to bury it, your truth always comes to light. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for opening eyes. Thank you for awakening your people. We thank you for the warriors who came before us, for the mothers who survived rape and still found strength to love their children, for the fathers who were sold away and still taught their sons to be men, for the children who were separated and still held on to hope, for every ancestor who refused to die, who refused to break, who refused to let them win. We honor them. We remember them. We speak their names into eternity, even though history tried to erase them. We pray for justice, Lord, for the 1 million souls sold down the river. For every mother who begged, "Please don't take my baby," and was ignored. For every child who cried for their mama and never saw her again. For every man who watched his wife sold away. For every woman raped in Virginia and Maryland and Kentucky. For every family destroyed for profit. We pray for justice. Vindicate them, Lord. Let their suffering not be in vain. We pray for restoration of what was stolen. $12 trillion to $100 trillion in labor. Generational wealth that should have been passed down. Land that should belong to us. Families that should have stayed together. Dignity that should never have been violated. Restore it, Lord. You are a God of justice. You see what was taken. Restore it sevenfold. Restore it, pressed down, shaken together, running over. What they stole, you will restore. We pray for the awakening of your people. Open eyes that have been blinded by lies and miseducation. Soften hearts that have been hardened by trauma and pain. Ignite spirits that have been dimmed by oppression and poverty. Wake us up, Lord. Let us see who we really are. Let us see our power. Let us see our purpose. Let us see that we are not victims, but victors. Not slaves, but warriors. Not poor, but robbed. Wake us up. Bless those who seek truth. Protect the historians uncovering documents they tried to hide. Protect the teachers telling the full story in their classrooms. Protect the activists marching and organizing and demanding reparations. Protect them from retaliation, from discouragement, from violence. Surround them with your angels. Give them strength and courage and provision. Bless them, Lord. Strengthen those who resist erasure. The grandmothers telling stories they were told to forget. The parents teaching children what schools won't teach. The young people making videos and writing books and refusing to stay silent. Strengthen them. Embolden them. Anoint them. Let their voices be heard. Let their message spread. Let the truth go viral. Strengthen them, Lord. Vindicate the memory of our ancestors. Let their names be remembered. Let their stories be told. Let their strength be celebrated. Let their pain be acknowledged. Let their resistance be honored. They were not just slaves. They were human beings. They were your children. They were royalty. Vindicate them, Lord. Tell the world who they really were, and give us courage to demand what is ours. Not with violence, but with truth. Not with hatred, but with justice. Not with division, but with dignity. Give us the courage to say you owe us and mean it. Give us the courage to organize, to vote, to protest, to demand. Give us the courage to build businesses and buy land and create wealth. Give us the courage to heal and to love and to pass down freedom to our children. Give us courage, Lord. You are a God of justice. Psalm 9:16 says the Lord is known by his justice. We know you. We trust you. We believe you see us. We believe you hear our prayers. We believe you will deliver, just like you delivered us from Egypt, just like you delivered us from Babylon, just like you delivered us from slavery. You will deliver us now. You will bring justice. You will restore what was stolen. We believe. We receive. We declare it done. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Walk in truth. Demand justice. You are free. This is the dark history. Until next time, build wealth, demand reparations, and remember the theft. Never forget what they did. Never forget what you're owed. Never forget who you are. You are a child of God. You are a descendant of warriors. You are unstoppable. God bless you. We'll see you in the next one.